Guys, welcome to Better Bachelor. My name is Joker with a face for radio and a voice for print. Young men are trending more conservative and women are trending more crazy. Now, why do I say this? Men are logically minded most of the time, and as such, more of them are either moderate or more conservative because they can't get their emotions swayed quite as easily, and they're not all on the hot topics and the rage of the moment because of what they're told on the media. They tend to do their investigation, and they tend to trend a little bit more based. And women, well, they're very much in on the emotional stuff, which is why the Democrats and in many cases leftists, whatever, they tend to pander to one's emotions. And it's working, and the women are going completely bonkers because of it. This is a story from The Hill that I wanted to talk about. And again, it just goes to show you, and then I have a map I'm going to break down a little bit. It just goes to show you that I think maybe, not that men are necessarily more honest, but maybe their BS detectors are tuned up a little bit, because if they're not, they're going to be taken advantage of either by businesses getting a salary or having to work more, and they're taken advantage of, or because they've been fed a bunch of BS most of their lives, or they know that if they're getting taken advantage of by women, especially. So I think men, their BS needles are a little bit more attuned. They say a popular narrative suggests young people are liberal and getting more liberal. Thus, social media buzzed when a chat surfaced in spring that seemed to suggest 12th grade boys had become overwhelmingly conservative. As with many Reddit posts and viral tweets, the truth was more complicated, but the numbers do say this: 12th grade boys are nearly twice as likely to identify as conservative versus liberal, according to a respected federal survey of American youth. In annual surveys over the last 3 years, roughly 1/4 of high school seniors self-identified as conservative or very conservative on the Monitoring the Future survey, a scholarly endeavor that dates to the 1970s. Only 13% of boys identified as liberal or very liberal in those years. And here you can see the chart here. So boys at one point back in the 70s was about 25%. And truth be told, it's about the same percentage for conservative now. What's the difference? What was labeled liberal back then is not the same as what's labeled liberal now. Liberal back then meant open-minded, willing to hear both sides of the stories, having different arguments or disagreements, and trying to find some middle ground. That tends to be more the conservative, not in all cases, but now liberal really means leftist. And let's face it, if you're liberal right now as a man, most of the time that means you don't want to have any deep discussions or open-minded thoughts about things. You're fine with baby deletion. You're fine with women being strong and empowered and the girl bosses, and the men being weak and effeminate and staying at home. And conservative now means really what used to be liberal, as well as the conservatives. So really, I would be surprised that both of these, the liberals from back in the day, that mindset is really, let's face it, everything like slightly right of Mao now is called far right. And the other thing, too, is the liberal group is the ones that are making men the bad guys in movies, saying the patriarchy and that all men are weak and they need to share their emotions. And then when they do share their emotions, they mock them and call them out. They're the ones that say that men shouldn't have nearly as much say in everything, even though men are less than 50% of the people graduating from college. So I think a lot of guys look at that and say, well, you hate me. Why would I identify with this group? Apparently, there's still roughly 13% of men that still do. The figures represent a striking shift in the political views of boys. As recently as the late 2000s, liberal boys occasionally outnumbered conservatives. Back in the Carter era, both boys and girls leaned liberal. But again, I think the terminology has changed since then. Because really, in all sense of the matter, I'm a liberal guy. Like, you want to talk about varying different topics, I'm not really conservative on a lot of things, but I'm not left on a lot of things. I'm really kind of in the middle. But again, the left has moved so far off now that in comparison, I'm actually a very conservative person now. And I think that, again, that's part of what's changing. Nowadays, it's girls who are drifting. No, they're lurching to the left. The share of 12th grade girls who identify as liberal, really leftism now at this point, rose from 19% in 2012 to 30% in 2022. Only 12% of girls identified as conservative in last year's survey administered by the University of Michigan. So what's happening here is women are lurching off to the left, and as you can see, the conservative girls are pretty much the same. They're still kind of conservative. So now it is taking a tail dive here at the end of it, because what they'll say is, do you think baby deletion is okay? And the leftism believes yes, up to and including his third birthday or its third birthday, where more conservative women or more moderate women would be like, yeah, for the first 8 weeks, 12 weeks, whatever. But that's all changed now. And so depending on the question you ask, yeah, it throws off the curve of things. Because again, if you would ask me a lot of these questions 10 years ago, people would have said, yeah, he's a relatively moderately liberal guy or moderate. And now, again, I'm very conservative. Young women, too, are trending liberal. Women ages 18 to 29 are more likely to identify as liberal now than any time in the past 2 decades. And really, it's not liberal anymore. It's left. So now the guys are still kind of staying mostly moderate. Maybe they're now identifying as more conservative because the Overton window has shifted. And the women that were liberal, now they're liberal as well as moving further off to the left. And they're kind of going crazy with things. And for proof of that, all you have to do is look at society. Look at the arguments we're having right now, that men can be women and women can be men, and you can teach, kindergartners this stuff. Like, we're literally going crazy, and it's pulling everything apart. And this is another reason why I think the long-term dating thing is in such deep trouble right now, because in a long-term relationship, guys are saying, you know something, I want a conservative woman, period, end of statement. They can't even look at a liberal woman because a liberal woman's not liberal. She's left. And so guys are kind of like, you know what, she's got blue hair and she's crazy, but she got a good rack. So I'll go out and do the old pump and dump, and then I'm out. And she certainly wouldn't want to, so they don't talk politics at all. And he doesn't talk about his values in life. And, Chad just goes out and does the old thunderstroke, and then he bounces. And that's another reason why relationships are falling apart, because there's no long-term future for men and women when both of them have diverged to such a great degree. They say the leftward drift, lurch, of young women alone has sufficed to move the needle on young adults as a whole. Gen Z favors liberalism over conservatism by a 48 to 33 margin, according to NBC News polls from 2022. 10 years earlier, young adults split evenly between the two political camps. So we now have lurched left because even though men are moving right, many more women are going even further left. And so it kind of yanks it back. And so if you ask yourself, what has changed? Why is everything going so crazy in the last 5 or 10 years? Go back to the previous generation. Go back to the millennial generation. They did a lurch. And so more and more, honestly, I'm just going to say it, more and more crazy women are taking this country in a crazy direction. And it's not going to turn out well for everybody. As a matter of fact, I have a couple of stories about that. I may do them as a one-off, or I may do it as a live stream over on Locals for supporters, where women have just gone crazy. I'll give you a quick little taste. There's a rugby player who's a man, like he has a receding hairline. He's a dude, talks like a dude, looks 0% like a woman, doesn't even act like a woman. But he's on a women's rugby team. And he sends 3 women, like real women, off to the hospital because he's bigger than them, and he knocks them out. And what happens when somebody tries to talk to him is all the women on his team come to defend him. They're women cheering on their own demise, because what'll happen is the other team will get one. And then he's going to knock them out. And they're going to walk off the field, and they either can A, complain, and that would be unfair, they can't do that, or B, shut up. And then you might get a couple of male players on the other team, and before you know it, what is it? It's a bunch of dudes calling themselves ladies, competing against another bunch of dudes calling themselves ladies, and the women will be on the sidelines. They'll be out of the sport, and they'll have voted themselves out of their own sport. This is why everything's going nuts, because now the women have the power. And the more in power they get, the more the craziness gets, because they're becoming judges and doctors and all the important positions in society. They say Jean Twenge, an author and professor of psychology at San Diego State University, presented the data in, why did that just refresh? In her new book, Generations, to spotlight the growing gender gap. She couched the numbers in a chart that split boys and girls along ideological lines, omitting moderates and the undecided. Among leftists, the future is female, she wrote, and among conservatives, the future is male. And they go down to break this down a little bit further. I don't need to. You kind of get the brunt of it. They start getting into like politicians and that kind of thing. But this is kind of ubiquitous everywhere. People are told lies, and if you're busy or you don't have time to do any research, you work a 9 to 5. You don't have the ability to investigate things on your own. You assume the media and the news and the movies and the commercials is a good representation of life, and they're telling you the truth. And I think what's happening is that men in general take the time to maybe investigate that a little bit further. They say here, women, if you look of our electoral map, if only women voted, 461 electoral college points would go to women or come from women, and 71 from men. Now, what's interesting is if you look here, you'll see, guys, if you want to still find, and I'm not saying this is necessarily a good idea, but if you want to find yourself a conservative woman, these are the places to look. Tennessee, Kentucky, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and North Dakota, Wyoming, Idaho, Utah. That's about it. Not so many. And here's if just men voted. And you can see, again, it's red across the board except for the West Coast, Illinois, New Mexico, New York, and all the highly populated areas, because most of the population in the Eastern Board is in cities, which we know are overwhelmingly liberal. Now, here's where just white women voting would be. Here's just white men. Here's non-college educated whites. And here's college educated whites. So it's very interesting to see. And I'm of the mind that women, and we just know this. This is not me saying anything that's, I don't know, really scandalous. Women think with their emotions, men think with logic. And right now, the left panders to their emotions. It's all about love. It's about compassion. It's about, oh, your rights, they're being stolen from you, even though they're really not. And conservatives are not really good at pushing those buttons because they don't really think like that, where the left does. And by being over the top and more emotional, what is over the top and being emotional and pandering? That's a lot of lying. And so I think a lot of women are being lied to. They don't realize it. And in the end, they're going to vote themselves right out of positions. They're going to hurt themselves in the long run. And a good, if you ever watch boxers or fighters fight, now occasionally a boxer will get angry and do very well, but most of the time it throws them off their game. You know, when a boxer or fighter, MMA fighter, whatever, when they get nervous, they're off their game. Mike Tyson used to scare the heck out of his opponents, and it would mess them up. If they get over angry, a lot of times they don't think about having a good game plan, and they rush in and they get knocked out. It's all about having logic. It's all about thinking clearly. And so when you can think clearly, you can look at the roadmap and say, okay, but we might do this today, and it might feel good today, but what about tomorrow? And again, I have another story I'm going to be talking about. I might do some of these in a video. This woman here, I sold my home for a facelift. Let me pop it back over here. Wrong one. Right here. I sold my home for a facelift. Now I look fabulous, but I live in a van. She sold her house to get a facelift, and now she lives in a van down by the river. Does that make any sense? I mean, would you sell your home and live in a van at 50 years old so you could maybe look 10 years younger, questionably? Of course not. Why? Because that's a horrible decision. But that's kind of how women are thinking right now. Maybe I don't know, maybe I'll do these as one-off videos instead of my live stream, but like just you can't think with emotion, or you're only going to see the next move on the chessboard. Men, if they do this, they fail. They go broke. They're homeless. Like, men have to look at a few steps down the road. Or at least smart men do. And I think that's why men are saying, okay, yeah, that might feel good now, but what are the long-term ramifications of your decision? And I think that's why more men are not only conservative, but they're truly liberal. They're actually more moderate liberal. And right now, women have left liberalism and conservatism, and they've gone far left, and they've gone crazy. And they're the ones in charge, and they're the ones getting us all in trouble. That's my thoughts on it. I'd like to hear what you guys think down below. Let me know. Like I said, maybe I'll do these other videos as one-offs, or I'll do it as a live stream with all of the stories together. I don't know. We'll see how things go, but yeah, let me know what you guys think down below. It'd be interesting to hear it. Don't forget, I'm going to be doing live streams and all my stuff over on Locals, not here anymore. It's going to be for supporters. It's $5 a month. Free speech forums, great community. We have movie nights over there, good times. So I hope you can join us over there, and we'll see you in the next one.